on Made in SA, we explore the fascinating world of people who design the spaces we live and work in.
My dream is to become an architect who bridges the gap between architecture and business and entrepreneurship.
Architects, more than anything, are trained to deal with complexity. You kind of collect a lot of things that don't often look as if they fit together, and you make a coherent whole out of them.
This is how we roll on Made in SA. We celebrate young people of excellence and give them a kickstart on the road to making their dream a reality.
My name is Ngoni. I am 23 years old and I live in Pretoria. For me, the best thing about living in Pretoria would have to be the warm nature of the people. I was born and raised in Zimbabwe, in a small town called Masvingo. But then what happens is when you finish your high school and need to go to tertiary, you need to kind of make that shift. And for me, South Africa was kind of a good option to come and pursue my tertiary education because of the qualitative standard of the tertiary education here. And for me, there was almost this culture shock, for instance. You get here and people, well, they have fun, to put it in simple context. And at the same time, they almost balance their academia. So I'm glad I got to experience that. At the same time, also get a bit of the actual tertiary education now. I would describe myself as hardworking, focused, and ambitious. Somewhat of an introvert, but I could always use a good laugh. For me, what would definitely characterize my idea of fun is a night out on a Saturday or Friday after a fairly hard week. The special people in my life would be my immediate family, especially my brother. I feel like he's been such a role model, especially coming from a young age. I always had someone to look up to.
So I was the first one to move to South Africa, mainly because of the situation in Zimbabwe, economic and socio-political, and I studied at University of Pretoria. It made it easier for Ngoni to come through when he needed a runner, with applications and his interviews and his assessment exams. I was there to assist him. He's an introvert, very quiet, keeps to himself and a few friends, or a very small circle. And because of that, he was more of an indoor person, but very intelligent as well, mainly because of, again, the type of things he exposed himself to. I'm
a very creative person, and so what I would naturally love is any form of space that would allow me to express myself. Other than that, my social life is largely based on me and friends.
I've been friends with Ngoni for the past 12, 15 years or so.
And I met Ngoni in 2015 at university. We were doing first year together.
We met in Zim, and that's in Zimbabwe. And later on, when he moved this side, I was also this side.
And then the relationship has just been going strong since then. Yeah.
What I like the most about Ngoni is his leadership quality. As an individual, you go through paces where you need encouragement, you need someone's perspective, someone's input. He's always there.
He's really open-minded, so we can have various conversations. It doesn't end with just architecture. We can have political arguments, we can have sports debates.
I love words, I love poetry, I love movies, I love taking a piece of paint and splashing it on a canvas and sitting there until I make sense of it.
What I don't like about Ngoni at times is there was a time when we used to live together, and when it comes to doing dishes, you'd always be, I'm gonna do them. So procrastination, basically.
What I don't like about him is going and doing a presentation after Ngoni's done it, because he can articulate himself really well, and then you have to go after Ngoni, and then you wonder, what am I gonna say after Ngoni's been so poetic?
regards to Ngoni's dream to become an architect, I'm actually very proud as an older brother, mainly because we come from a family of academics. It was almost a given that he would also study law, but then he decided that he wanted to study architecture, and I think that was the best decision he's ever made.
It's part of my personal goals to leave a footprint on this earth. So I challenged the idea of becoming a lawyer by pushing myself into a field that was almost unknown.
And I think it's going to be really interesting going into the working environment and how he's going to do next year.
He thinks out of the box. And for him to just follow a mold where, like myself, the law is the law, it is what it is. Whereas for him, he sees a building or he sees a structure and there can be 10 to 1,000 interpretations.
So what is intriguing about the union buildings? The very term union, it speaks about the idea of various components coming together. Initially in 1913 when it was built, it was the British coming together with the Afrikaners. So the form of the building, it takes after a curve, a circle, because the circle naturally represents completeness. But now we're saying a curve on its own is limited because it's not a complete circle. So I feel like going forward, the union buildings could not only speak about the past, but could incorporate the past of other marginalized or formerly marginalized ethnic groups.
I do see him breaking barriers, going beyond. Again, because just from his degree alone, just from his studies, I look at his work and I'm like, wow, I would have never thought of this.
He has more than what it takes to make it.
The biggest challenge I feel like in achieving my dreams or moving towards my goals is you expect industry to be certain things, you expect school to be certain things, and then they do not necessarily turn out that way. And I feel like as a young individual, these are things that may bring you down and make you lose hope.
And I think because of his personality as well, keeping to himself and having a small circle of friends and colleagues, he needs to improve on that. For his personal growth and also his professional career as well.
When people say to me this dream would not lead well anyway, I feel like it's quite inviting and for me it blew my courage and ambition even further.
He just has that extra push that I believe will enable him to become a great architect, and we'll probably read a lot of books and articles about him.
Amanda Chimdara.
The greatest benefit that he's going to get from having a coach is the experience that the coach will bring in terms of working and having been in a professional environment. We always say experience is the best teacher.
Originally from Zimbabwe, Ngoni has made South Africa his home to pursue his dream of becoming a successful architect and to bring a truly African voice to the structures he creates. Today we are hanging with Ngoni, who's an undergraduate student in architecture. You need to be seriously committed as it takes 7 years to become an architect. Time to meet his coach, who's an architect, academic, and novelist.
I'm feeling quite excited to meet my coach today and spending the day with him. This is because I expect it to be an incredible process in which I think I'll get to learn a lot of things.
My name's Leslie Loco. I'm the head of the Graduate School of Architecture at the University of Johannesburg, and I'm an architect and an academic. I started out in sociology, then went back to study architecture, became an architect, qualified and all the rest of it. So for me, it's not been a drawback not being a straightforward practicing architect or not being a straightforward academic. I rather like the kind of in and out of the way my career has unfolded. I think architects, more than anything, are trained to deal with complexity. That's probably the skill of the best architect. You kind of collect a lot of things that don't often look as if they fit together, and you make a coherent whole out of them. In terms of the architectural education, insofar as I've seen it in this country, what most students here lack is confidence.
I'm a bit nervous, to be honest. This is because when the idea of meeting a mentor, you're kind of anxious whether you're going to meet up to expectations. So as resultantly, I am a bit nervous.
What do you need to be successful? Tenacity. It's a very, very slow profession. So I mean, when people talk about architects being, young architects at the age of 50, there's a reason for it. It's, you've spent a good 30 years training, to do that one really important building. So tenacity, I think, is really important. And in terms of one's personality, the ability to get on with people, because, the architect is what they call the principal agent. He or she is the person with whom the buck stops in any building site, any building project.
If today doesn't work out and I don't live up to expectations, I'll be really disappointed. But moving forward, I feel like it's important, as always, to, after having a slight setback, to just sit down, re-strategize, and get back on the horse.
In a lot of creative industries, if you think about it, a lot of passion goes into the work. You put your heart, your body, your mind, your soul into this project. You've stayed up, almost 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours. So it's quite difficult in those situations to hear someone say, well, I don't like it, or, it's rubbish, or this isn't, what I thought it would be. In those moments, I would always advise students just draw a really deep breath. Because part of what your jury is looking for, of course, is the passion and the commitment and the fire in the belly. But what they're also looking for is the maturity, for you not to take the criticism personally.
What I say to myself when something like that happens is it's not an easy ride. There's always going to be ditches, but what's important is your reaction after something doesn't go according to plan. Normally when I'm disappointed with myself, I do have a small motto or something I tell myself, generally, which is I need to get past this. It's only a slight setback.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And you are?
I am Ngoni.
Ngoni.
Or Ngoni in short, yes.
Lordy, okay. I'll practice that. Yeah. I'm Prof Loco, so
okay.
Welcome.
Okay,
great.
Thank you very much.
This is the space where we will be working next year. We've just started construction on it, and the idea is that every group of students gets a dedicated space. One of the things that we always like to say to students coming in is that you're going to learn 50% of what you know from us, from your tutors, and 50% from each other. So it's really important that you have these spaces that are really yours, that you work together. How did you choose architecture to begin with?
Coming from high school and going into university, the choice to study architecture was really driven by my passion for the creative side of it. Yeah.
We're going to take you to our downtown base in Maboneng, and I'm going to give you a very, very small brief. It's a little bit of a taster of what life in the graduate school might be like.
Okay.
So are you ready for your challenge?
Okay, let's go do it.
Okay, let's go. I'm about to give you your challenge.
All right.
So there you go.
A brief. Okay.
There's a brief.
Okay, all right.
And it's called Ways of Seeing.
All right.
And it's one of the first things we do in the graduate school, is to get students to see differently. And its first quote comes from Alice in Wonderland, which I'm sure you must have read as a child.
I did
Just
see
say
a
yes.
movie. Yeah.
You saw the movie.
I did see a movie.
You millennials. Yeah. So your task is to go out not more than 500 meters from Moad, and within that range, that radius, I want you to find 6 impossible things.
Okay.
They can be artifacts, they can be photographs, they can be little sketches. Just 6 things that don't fit together.
All right. The challenge so far has been a bit odd, but I find it at the same time quite interesting. The part I found particularly interesting is the idea of looking at 2 opposites, because normally the city blends in, so I was looking for very contrasting things. So I found that quite interesting. Can I just lay them out?
Lay them out, yep. So the first thing I want to ask you is there any hierarchy? In other words, is one of these things more important than the other?
No, I wouldn't like to think.
Okay.
At the back of my mind, I classified it that way. No.
Okay, all right.
Why I chose this piece, for instance, is that to me it was an on a white piece of concrete that was fairly grey and dull. So it stood out because it was shining back. And then with what I was trying to do here is as we were going around, we saw this piece of bottle and the two glasses and some sort of discarded cigarette box at the background. And to me, they kind of resonated well because they were just like they alone on the table. We couldn't see the client was
so
having.
What that tells me is that you're making a relationship between this little magpie piece of discarded rubbish and then a bottle and two glasses. So there is a kind of relationship between your image of what that belongs to. Okay.
My first impressions of Prof. Loco is that she is a very intelligent woman and knows what she's doing, and she's quite dominant in her own space.
I think he's very perceptive, which are really good quality. He's very quick, which is also good. Sometimes a little too quick, which we will teach him to slow down, to see things maybe a little bit more deeply.
Ngoni jumped into his challenge with no fear and already showed two important skills of a prospective architect: imagination and problem-solving skills. Let's see if his coach is impressed with how he interprets her challenge. We are spending a day with Ngoni, who dreams of becoming a respected architect. It's clear that you need to be constantly curious if you want to pursue this career. Let's find out how Ngoni scores on the second part of his challenge.
So when I got the brief, I knew from the onset that I was going to get something of a weird nature, which is go and do something which you wouldn't think of conventionally. So my immediate reaction when I saw the brief was, am I going to be able to do this task that I've been given?
What this tells me, this collection of artifacts, is that you're somebody who's interested in things that are out of place, which is quite interesting. So here you've taken something that's maybe more in a vertical rather than a horizontal plane. So you talked about this being used as cladding, and you found it on the ground. This little bottle piece here is something that we would probably find, probably somewhere like that. So it's been taken out of place. There's a very strong relationship between this composition. It tells me that you've got a very curious eye. And as we were explaining before, we were talking before, I mean, what's most important, particularly at the postgraduate level in architecture, is not your ability to technically resolve something. It's your ability to see in the very, very first place. Okay, so you've gone out and you've collected your objects.
All right, yeah.
So now I'm going to give you part B, if you like, of this task, because tasks are never finished.
True, that's true, yeah.
What I'd like you to do over the next sort of half hour, 30 minutes, no more, I want you to make a composition of all of these elements using your intuition about what should go next to what. So it's basically to make a still life out of all of these things that you've found. So what I want you to do is to think very carefully about how you will get something that's in your phone together with something, an artifact, something that you can hold in your hand. I like it already.
I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do.
I'll tell you why I like it already, is because often a drawing is quite static, you know, it's quite two-dimensional, but you've already started to play with layers, so you're beginning to fold things up from the page, and yet there's a very nice relationship between when you lift something off and you've got the kind of absence of the thing underneath it. So that tells me that you think in quite an interesting three-dimensional way. I like the composition. I like the fact that you move from the stone to the drawing of the stone. There's a bit of sketching going on. You've got real fragments in it. So this is quite a complex drawing, which is a really good thing. So, well done.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I think you did really well with the challenge. I mean, I think there's a lot of times a student is faced with, or a potential candidate is faced with something that doesn't appear to make sense. and then they freeze. And I think he did exactly the opposite. He trusted his own intuition. He went out there, he found things that had meaning for him, but kept his eye on the brief.
I'm struggling a bit with the idea between montage and collage.
Okay.
So, the distinction between the
Yeah.
two. So I just went with what I felt like building up. But yeah, I feel like also when you put things together physically and actual drawing, you find a new language between the two.
Absolutely, and I mean, I think what we're trying to say to students, particularly at this moment in time, is that you've got so many tools of representation available to you. I mean, everything from a phone, and if you think about it, 10 years ago, that was not available as a tool for making architecture, to drawings, to making short films, to photo montages. You know, the ways in which you can represent your ideas are enormous. So what we're looking for is not necessarily the widest range of tools or the widest imagination. It's all about the relationship between them. So, you know, if I looked at this as a composition, I could take away 6 or 7 really strong ideas, and that's what's important. Take a photograph of this and keep this.
Okay.
One day, we're going to be able to auction off this drawing as the very first Ngoni piece of architecture.
All right.
When you become a famous architect.
Okay.
So thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Okay, I had a wonderful time. Thank you for the great feedback. I'm also eager to meet you at the prospect school.
All right,
okay,
take care. Bye.
My day was absolutely amazing. I enjoyed working with the professor. She's a very passionate woman and she knows how to impart the knowledge she has onto us. On the other hand, I did find the challenge a bit out of the ordinary, but I feel like it was important as a young architect student to eventually just go along with what I felt my intuition. This is because I feel like it's important for architects to learn to live by their decisions and develop them conceptually until they come to an end product.
When I started architecture, I think I didn't know that it was going to be 7 years long. I had a kind of vague idea at the back of my mind that I'd do an undergraduate degree and then I might come back and do some sort of training. And if I had my time again, I would savor every single one of those 7 years. So what I would say to Ngoni is come back when you're really ready to do it and take your time with it. This will probably be the most interesting, the most creative, the most challenging time of your career. So we're looking forward to having you.